This week's vocabulary words focus on words that can be used to describe tone, whether that's the tone of how someone is speaking and their word choice, or it's their word choice when written. These are also all adjectives, so that they are also words that you can use to describe several other things as well, and you'll see a variety of both in the example sentences. What I've done is I have ranked your words in order of nicest to meanest, or most positive starting up at the top to the most negative. So genial would be the most positive word, whereas incendiary would be the most negative or the meanest of the words. Genial is the first word, and I'm going to go through these in order from nicest to meanest, rather than in the order you were originally given on your vocabulary list. So genial is your first one. And this is something that's warmly and pleasantly cheerful, cordial. So something that's especially nice or kind. So you might describe someone as a genial woman whose words were nice and kind. So any kind of text where you see that there's a great deal of kindness or warmth towards a topic, that might be described as having a genial tone. The next is nostalgic. Nostalgic is experiencing or exhibiting nostalgia, a sentimental or wistful yearning for the happiness felt in a former place, time, or situation. You might hear this with grandparents or other older people talking about the good old days, which, if you go back in history, the good old days really weren't that good. They were rather difficult, but our memories tend to romanticize the past and pick up on the good things while forgetting about the negatives. So an example sentence here would be, his grandfather always became nostalgic when talking about the good old days. The next word is pretentious. The first definition really doesn't give us a whole lot of help when it comes to understanding what it means. So full of pretense or pretension. The other two definitions, though, do help clarify what it is to be pretentious. So this is characterized by assumption of dignity or importance. So this would be kind of assuming that you are more important or better than you are, perhaps. And the third definition is making an exaggerated outward show, being ostentatious. So if, in the case of this definition, if you are making a show of how good you are, or how smart you are, or how rich you are, that can be acting pretentious. I have some friends who make a show out of buying lots and lots of stuff. Their boat is a BMW brand. So all of their stuff has to be these really expensive name brand things, and then they have to post all over Facebook about them because they're acting pretentious and they want people to see how important they are, and so that's how they choose to show it. Another example would be the example sentence. The pretentious boy continuously used overly large words no one knew to try and sound smarter than everyone else. So if you're trying to make yourself somehow appear better than someone else, that's being pretentious. So if a text is basically lauding or praising yourself or anything else, when it's not necessarily accurate or perhaps not appropriate for the context, that would be acting pretentious. The next one is a word that, from what I heard when people were speaking about vocabulary words, one that a lot of you are having difficulty pronouncing. It looks like it's perhaps facetious, but in actuality the word is pronounced facetious. This is something not meant to be taken seriously or literally, something that's amusing or humorous, or lacking serious intent, concerned with something non-essential, amusing, or frivolous. These are oftentimes also somewhat sarcastic, but not quite that far, and sometimes kind of inappropriate, like a dirty joke could be facetious, or kind of dirty comments, like "that's what she said" type comments could be considered facetious. So, in the example sentence, no one knew when to believe her stories because of her tendency for facetious, funny tales. The next word is chagrin, and this is vexed or marked by disappointment or humiliation. The example sentence, his girlfriend's rejection of his proposal on national TV led to a feeling of great chagrin. This really fits with both the disappointment and humiliation aspects of the definition, because I would imagine that anyone who loves and cares about someone enough to propose to them is going to be disappointed if that person says no. Likewise, especially if it's on national television, there's likely to be some feelings of humiliation. So any text that's really expressing some sort of great disappointment and or humiliation could be described as chagrined. Irreverence, the next one. This means not reverent, manifesting or characterized by irreverence. Neither of those is particularly telling as far as what the definition is. But the next part is deficient in veneration or respect. So what this word means is that someone's being disrespectful, particularly towards authority figures. This can be people like parents or teachers, but it can also be people of greater authority, so such as leaders like a president or a king, and it can also be moved into the religious realm. So if you're being disrespectful to a religion in general, or to the practitioners of the religion, particularly the leaders like the priests or reverends, that can be described as being irreverent. In the example sentence, the boy's disrespect toward his parents resulted in his grounding for irreverence. The next word is sardonic. Sardonic and contemptuous, the next word, are fairly closely related. The difference is that while sardonic is characterized by bitter or scornful derision, like contempt would be, the difference is that if something is sardonic, then it is also mocking, cynical, and sneering. So you've got this mocking or kind of making fun of, and perhaps even satirical message about it. Whereas contemptuous would just be angry and scornful. So Swift wrote a sardonic critique of the government's inaction in A Modest Proposal, and he proposed instead a policy of his own to eat babies. So this has that mocking and kind of sarcastic, satirical element to it that is joined with the scorn that comes with being sardonic. So as I said, contemptuous is similar. It's showing or expressing contempt or disdain. Scornful, the difference is this doesn't have the element of mocking or making fun of something or satire that kind of lightens something that's sardonic just a bit. So we saw a lot of contempt and contemptuous remarks in regards to Todd Akin earlier in the year when he made remarks about legitimate rape, saying that when there was legitimate rape, a woman's body would prevent pregnancy from happening. He was scorned by other politicians, doctors, and anyone who really knew anything about science because of his remarks. Scathing is the next one, and this is a step up from contemptuous. So contempt is scornful, so kind of critical, and disdainful, but scathing is kind of outright hostile. So a scathing remark is bitterly severe. It can also be harmful, injurious, or searing. So this is a much more hateful and angry remark compared to contempt. Whereas contempt is maybe perhaps more disgusted and sometimes even in shock of, did you really say that kind of thing? So the example sentence is probably something you've all experienced before. So her scathing look made it absolutely clear that she was beyond furious. You've probably all, especially from your parents when you're doing something stupid, have received that scathing look. And the last word is incendiary. An incendiary often has to do with fire or explosions, as in the first two definitions. But the other two definitions really have a lot to do with tone and also the intent of the words. So incendiary remarks have the anger that accompanies a scathing remark, but the difference between scathing and incendiary is also meant to cause some sort of action. So if we look at the last two definitions, tending to arouse strife, sedition, etc., and the last one, tending to inflame the senses, you're trying to get people to do something, and usually something negative. So whereas some comments that could be angry and a critique of something might encourage people to go do something positive, like to go vote, an incendiary comment is usually going to be inciting something negative and or violent. So in this case of the example sentence, his incendiary comments incited a riot. So this is not at all a positive thing. So incendiary has the anger of a scathing remark, but it's coupled with something that's going to incite some sort of negative action or reaction.